Thanks a lot. Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to be here to show you what we are doing in terms of clinical translation of implantable and wearable devices in the framework of the Spoke 8 of the project THE. In particular, we believe that more and more implantable and wearable solutions will become solutions for clinical problems, of course, in a complementary way to the drugs that you saw in the previous sessions. Today, I want to show you very quickly our current activities funded by THE and other projects for two specific applications. For the restoration of locomotion in people after spinal cord injury, so where the limb is still there but no more functionally connected to the brain, and on the other side, when the arm is no more there and you need to work on an artificial solution, a prosthetic limb, which then has to be neurointegrated into the nervous system of the user. And in general, what I'm going to show you is three different kind of ideas and pillars we use to achieve these results. One is, of course, the possibility to use more and more basic science. So we are intrinsically translational. We work from basic science, neuroscience in particular, to the clinics. Second, the idea is to use the Razor-Occam principle to make very simple devices. So as much as possible to simplify the technology, to speed up our clinical translation possibility. And third, I was very much interested in the previous session. There was another colleague on the ADC drugs, which I have no idea what it is, but she was working about the Lego approach. This is what we also do. This is the cover of a MED paper, the Translational Journal of the Cell Family, and you can see that the idea of what we try to do is to combine, like Lego bricks, different kind of technologies, to speed up the translation to clinical application. First, how to restore locomotion after spinal cord injury in paraplegics. We know since, even the end of the 19th century, that the spinal cord has the remarkable ability to generate, if properly electrically stimulated movements in small animals, in lampreys, for example, or in cats, even without a cortical command. This is something that people like Sten Grillner, for example, have been working on for many years at Karolinska. And this idea was exploited by a few scientists, in particular my colleague and friend Grégoire Courtine at the PFL, with the idea in mind to use this knowledge in patients with spinal cord injury. So the idea is to do the same of what Grillner has been doing with lampreys, so stimulating the spinal cord below the lesion in order to restore locomotion artificially. And this is what Grégoire did a few years ago, was the first paper he published in Nature. Here you can see the first patient. In this case, the idea is to combine robotics for gravity compensation with strongly gravity is challenging us constantly, and eliminating in the first phase of rehabilitation gravity is very important for these patients. And again, maybe if I go back and no. Let's see whether now it's stuck. Okay. You can see here on the left there is a paddle where the stimulation is happening. And this again the first example of the Lego idea. With this, what Grégoire did was to reuse a technology for spinal implants to achieve the restoration of function in patients. And here,
an engineering framework that allows the use of activity-dependent stimulation programs in rehabilitation settings, as well as outdoors.
So this is a complete patient, a patient with a complete lesion. You can see that thanks to the routine,
physical therapist can fine-tune stimulation parameters.
The guy can get back function. So he's able to walk again using the spinal cord stimulation. So what we are doing in the Spoke 8 is to take this technology we developed in the PFL in Switzerland and move it to Italy thanks to a collaboration with the San Raffaele Hospital in Milan. In particular, we established this joint laboratory with Professor Pietro Mortini to again show that it is possible to make this kind of activities also outside Switzerland in other centers, increasing the number of the patients we are treating. We implanted so far 7 patients, both with incomplete and complete lesion. And here, hopefully, you can see the results in 1 patient. I don't have the time to enter into the details, but here you see the patient starting with treadmill walking with gravity compensation and moving slowly, you will see at the end with overground walking. Of course, the walking we get is not super perfect, but it helps significantly functionally the patient. And we are exploiting this more in the THE project, trying to increase the number of the patients, developing new computational technologies to speed up the rehabilitation. Because right now you need 3 or 4 months to reach this kind of results. And in general, we want to make it faster to have more patients tested. The other application I'm going to briefly tell you about is the dual application, when the hand is an artificial one. And in particular, over the years, we've been working a lot on the possibility of providing sensory feedback in the patients with hand amputation with prosthetic devices using electrodes implanted into the peripheral nerve. In particular, we developed a new technology, which is the time electrode, which is an intraneural electrode implanted through the nerve peripherally, which is able to have a very high selectivity, so the ability to control a small group of axons into the nerve with a reasonable invasiveness. And with this in mind, a few years ago, 10 years ago actually, we performed our first implant in a patient. It was Dennis, a unilateral amputee with a left amputation. And here you can see that when you switch on the stimulation, you are able to cheat the brain. So the idea is that the patient can feel, I don't know what is happening, but the patient can feel at the phantom hand some sensation. So you see the hand is no more there, but there is the feeling. So with this feeling, we decided to see whether functionally there was an improvement, and we asked Dennis to perform different kind of tasks, okay, grasping object and getting sensory feedback back. I will not make all the story too long, but Dennis was able to achieve a remarkable performance in terms of functional improvement of grasping modulation, even in real time. You can see in the top panel there is one red arrow, and when Dennis was understanding that there was a mistake, he was adjusting the stimulation, the grasping force in real time. So Dennis achieved very, very good performance in a 1-month experiment because we started with 1 month. Then we moved from 1 patient 1 month to 3 patients up to 6 months, and to kind of confirming and extending what we found with Dennis. And then we recently, in the Spoke 8 activity, we showed that it was possible to achieve the last piece of sensory information which was missing. Because temperature cannot be achieved by directly stimulating the nerve, because in this case, the nerves are too small to achieve something selective on that specific sensation. What we found was the possibility to stimulate thermally the residuum, the stump of the amputees, also in this case, kind of cheating the brain. So you see, by stimulating, the patient are able to feel at the phantom hand, the hand again is no more there because of the amputation, a sensation of cold and hot temperature. And the beauty of this was that it was very good for the 25 patients tested to control this information, to show that they can understand in real time. And this is very simple to use translationally, because it's a very cheap and wearable solution. And indeed, we integrated it in the Spoke 8 activity in one commercial hand, and the patient was able to use it in real time. Now, what we are planning to do also with INAIL and IIT Genova is to have the first fully implanted device. So in 1 year from now, more or less at the end of the Spoke 8 activity, there will be 2 patients fully implanted with all the palette of sensation, temperature, touch, and position information. But very briefly, as I told you, we are using the Lego approach. So the building blocks has been also used in collaboration with colleagues and friends from university, from the ETH Zurich, also for leg function restoration. So in this case, we use the same technology, but for people with transfemoral above knee amputation. You see here the scheme. The sensorization was done in sole in the shoes, and the patient was getting the information in electrodes implanted in the upper part of the leg. And this was very interesting because the clinical results we achieved were dramatically showing that there is an improvement in terms of walking ability, reduction of metabolic consumption, reduction of fear of falling, and so on, and reduction of pain. So for this reason, we created a startup company, Sensars, which is trying to commercialize this kind of approach. And the same approach is currently under investigation with the University Hospital of Florence, close by to the Leopolda, to see whether we can restore function in the opposite way, again in people with tetraplegia, so with the lesion of the spinal cord very high at the cervical level. So the idea would be to show that this intraneural electrode can also help for motor function restoration. So in conclusion, what we are trying to do is to combine different kinds of technologies in order to have the Lego bricks developing different personalized solutions for different kinds of people with different kinds of disabilities. This is what we are doing in the framework of the Spoke 8 activity in collaboration with the San Raffaele Hospital. So it was a bit fast, but I hope you got the clinical potential of what we are doing. Let me thank, of course, all the people I've been working on and my team between Pisa, Lausanne, and Milano. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Silvestro. Very inspiring. Any questions for Silvestro? Yes, from here.
Okay.
Directly from the stage. As a bioengineer, I have just a curiosity. I have a curiosity between the mapping of the signal that you can that you generate on the spinal cord to obtain the right movement, the right sequence of movement. In electrophysiology in general, we understood the electrophysiological model of our systems trying. For example, regarding the cochlea, we understood the mapping between the signal that we have to generate with the result trying to stimulate different areas of the cochlea with different intensity, with different shape of signal, and so on. So what about the mapping between the signal that you generate on the spinal cord in respect to the muscle? For example, there is a direct mapping between the area that you stimulate in respect to the muscle, for a specific muscle or so on?
Then I can see you. That's a very important question. So first, we developed a lot of biophysical models combining finite element methods plus a neuron network of the spinal cord. And the first thing that we found many years ago is that even if it's a motor stimulation, because people walk again, is a sensory-driven stimulation. Because electrically, for the electrical property of the spinal cord, you first stimulate the sensory nerves, which then are activated and by reflex generate the motor part. So this was important to understand the principles of this. The second important thing is that in general you get information about the motor neuron distribution in the patient, and then when you put the pad on top of it, you have a first understanding of where the different part of the pad are going to stimulate, and then which kind of muscular activation. But at the end, at the bottom line, it is a blind process. So you can make all the planning, but the planning, and we published a paper with Curtin a few years ago, 2 years ago, but the planning at the very end, it's just helping you a bit. The real part, when you implant, is to spend 1 or 2 weeks characterizing the response. So you stimulate spinally and you get the muscular twitches. At the end, you can avoid that, even if you can plan everything surgically with a lot of imaging, the modeling. These 1 or 2 weeks of calibration are necessary. What we can do is, but then the complicated part, and I go to the end, is to combine everything. And in that sense, machine learning can help, because you have 32 channels, and in principle, you should test all the combinations. So what we are working on is a machine learning approach to speed up this combination approach, predicting what you are going to get by simulating unknown couples of electrodes. That's definitely the next step, because you want to speed up the rehabilitation phase at least a bit to have more patient treated.